assiduous and hard-working Minister for Parliamentary Affairs that deserve our congratulations. I don't want to be so rude as to suggest to the Leader of the House to proceed to his other occupation, but do please proceed, because we have the Honourable Minister of Chemicals and Fertilizers to pilot this bill. I had begun, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to really despair of this bill ever coming up for consideration. It felt as if it had been orphaned and abandoned, because day after day it would get listed and for one reason or another get postponed. And today, really, I thought that it is not fated. There's some evil eye on this bill. So I congratulate the government for finally managing to get this bill for consideration and passing. So I must, before I express my support for the provision, I must express some confusion as to why the Minister for Chemicals and Fertilizer ought to be dealing with chemical weapons. Now, chemical weapons is not a subject which harmonizes either with fertilizers or with chemical weapons. It's really a subject that ought to be considered either by the Ministry of External Affairs, or if you stretch the point, being weapons, then it's Ministry of Defense. Please, I would request the Honourable able Minister of Chemicals and Fertilizers, who is a colleague of very old standing, whom I respect. This is not a comment on your abilities, Mr. Minister. It's a comment on really the dysfunctional style of this government. Now, the explanatory notes, the objects and reasons, they are sufficiently clear. Then the able minister has further clarified issues, and therefore there is very little for me to say except to support the measures that this bill intends to enact. I do wish to, however, point out one or two aspects. One is I wish to illustrate what chemical weapons can do. And I cite to you, sir, the example of, perhaps the name will strike some chords of memory, Ghana, Vietnam. Now, 4 decades, it's a very recent report, 40 years after the end of the Vietnam War, they have now started cleaning up the area, because what was used in Vietnam, Cambodia, also parts of Laos, by United States of America was a herbicidal chemical called Agent Orange. And that caused so much damage that even now, 40 years later, not a blade of grass grows on those soils. Also, that this has caused so much damage to succeeding generations. Children are born with defects, are born with cancerous tendencies. The damage that is caused by chemical weapons is long-lasting and really pernicious. I would also cite the example, for example, of what is happening in Syria today. Despite what is happening in Syria, if there is a great hesitation on the part of the Western countries to intervene, it's because Syria has already announced openly that were the United States of America or any other Western country to intervene, they would use the chemical weapons that they have. which takes me to an aspect that I wish to underline. And that aspect about the totality of weapons of mass destruction, and in particular the need for verification of the claims that are made that we have banned the use of chemical weapons, but we have also destroyed the stock that we had in possession. A classic example of the violation of this, of course, is a very recent report that's been made public. It's a report prepared by the lawmakers of the United States of America, and they have made it public now that Pakistani officials have stated the government may be increasing significantly its nuclear arsenal. Now, I do not know whether Pakistan is a subscriber to the chemical weapons convention, or whether they are, do these subscribers have an obligation to go through verification, internationally verifiable measures that ensure that there is no inadvertent or deliberate storage of chemical weapons. I'll give you another example, and that is, of course, Bhopal. Bhopal is a living example of what damage can be done to land, to environment, and to human beings, and for many generations by misuse or maluse of chemicals. Bhopal is a living example. And another example, sir, which are daily confronted by the country, is the state of our rivers. If our rivers are polluted, it's because the discharge of chemicals into those rivers, with the result that the rivers, even like Ganga and Jamuna, are today not rivers of great reverence, that they have become virtually flowing chemical poisons. These are examples which go to justify why we do need these amendments, why we do need these laws. I would also like to add here that I not only fully support the measure that the government is bringing, but that I would recommend very strongly that the government examine the question of international verification of what the convention and subsequent follow-up legislations require, and if possible for the Honourable Minister to inform us as to what the government intends doing. And for that purpose, as a suggestion, sir, I really do think, though he's a very able minister, that the question of chemical weapons is not a subject that the Ministry for Chemicals and Fertilizers ought to be dealing with. I conclude, sir, by saying that we support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.